Well, congratulations on your latest album release for the multiplayer big band. Searching for Friends, a big band jazz tribute to Final Fantasy IV. How do you feel since you released it?
Oh, it feels great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of in progress for like the last 5, 6 months,
hmm
and I was just kind of chomping at the bit to release it, so it feels good.
Well, I've been listening to it since we first started talking, and I love it so much. I have to admit that Final Fantasy it's one of the games that I haven't played yet. I find that I listen to a lot of video game music for games that I haven't actually played, but I still really enjoy it. And then the first album was Critical Hits, which I've listened to a lot since we started talking. That's more of a mix of popular video game tracks like Sonic and Zelda, Kingdom of Hearts. I am a massive Sonic and Zelda fan, but I must admit that my favorite track is Main Theme from My Familiar.
Oh,
I
nice.
just, there's something about it, and my vocabulary with music is not the most intelligent, but the sense that I get is just euphoria when I listen to it.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the rare. There's two originals on that album, and that is
Mm-hmm.
one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because in addition to doing these arrangement albums, I do freelance game audio for some games, and that
Mm-hmm.
was actually a track I did for a game called My Familiar, which is not out yet, but it's in production.
Okay.
And the developer pitched doing a full out big band version of the main theme. That's kind of actually where the genesis for these critical hits sort of came.
Mm-hmm.
I did the Jig Is Up and the main theme for My Familiar early in 2020, and I put together a remote band, and then the gear started turning like, wait, I can do this for a lot of other things,
Yeah.
and I got encouraged to make the rest of the album. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that one.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I have honestly really gotten into big band video game music this year.
Hmm.
For me, it started with the 8-bit big band.
Hmm.
I've also listened to them so many times. My favorite from them is Rosaline and the Observatory. I listen to that
Oh yeah.
literally every single day, and it's kind of embarrassing. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this series where I interview video game composers because I don't know a lot about the whole composing and arrangement process, but I do know that I'm extremely passionate about video game music. So I really appreciate you being here and taking time to talk to me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And then, do you have a favorite song on the new album?
Let's think. I might like the closing track,
Mm-hmm.
"Searching for Friends," the title track. Um, that tune in Final Fantasy Six is a tune that when my son was first born
Mm-hmm.
in late 2020, my wife and I would split up shifts to take naps, and so I would go till about 3, 4 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
and watch him, put him down, feed him every other hour or whatever. And during that time, I needed something to do to keep me up, so I hooked up my Wii and played FF6 on the Virtual Console. And there's a part of the game towards the end where that song plays a lot, and it's always was one of my favorite tunes. But like now, I have like this really fond memory of like my son being an infant, and all those sleepless nights and
Mm-hmm.
playing the game while he's napping. And so I really wanted to do justice to that arrangement, and then I was pretty pleased with how the arrangement came out. And so it's a little bit more ambitious than the other songs. It's a long
Mm-hmm.
track. It's like 7 minutes, 8 minutes, something like that. That might be my favorite though. So I hope
Yeah.
people like that one.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I've listened to it so many times, and that's so cool that you have such a sentimental attachment to it. That's amazing because I think that's what's important about doing things like this. Because sometimes you never find out things like that. So it's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
My personal favorite on the album is, and I have heard many different pronunciations of this name, but Celeste's theme. How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, I actually don't know the canon. I say Celis, but I think it
Yeah.
could be Celeste. I can't speak. There's no voice acting in the game, so it's anybody's
Right.
guess, right?
Yeah, that's so interesting because, like, I was trying to figure out how to pronounce it before this interview so that I didn't look
Sure.
like an idiot. But
Oh, it's fine. I don't know. I don't know the right
well,
way.
that's comforting to know because I saw, based on what language you speak, it's also different. So like if you speak Spanish, you pronounce it one way, but some people were saying seals, some people were saying celeste, some people were saying celis. So I just wanted to ask and get your opinion on that. But that's good to know that, I wasn't crazy.
Now, you're not actually. I had this similar conversation the other day with someone. They were asking about it, and I said, I don't know exactly how to say it. So anyone's guess, really.
Yeah. So I just want to talk about multiplayer big band for a little bit longer.
Sure.
Is it true that you arrange all of the songs for the band?
Yes. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm the primary arranger.
Mm-hmm.
Every track on the last two albums was arranged or composed by myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't do it without all the great musicians. And Um, I have a lot of experience as a big band leader. I had 3 albums under my own name, the Tyler Muir Big Band,
Mhm.
but those were like a set group of 18, 20 musicians, and the people, the band didn't change hands between tracks. But since we were doing this remotely, I realized I could have include friends all over the country and the world. So I call it like a commune. It's like a big band collective of like 40, 50 different musicians. Because I was
Yeah.
actually looking at the credits, and it might be up to 50 musicians or so that have
Wow.
recorded on Critical Hits and Searching for Friends. Between like Tifa Steam, which has all the string players, I
Hmm.
think we had about 12 string players. And so yeah, I do all the arranging, but I don't do all the performing. I mean, I play trumpet on every track, but
Hmm.
only one trumpet part. So can't make this happen without all the great contributions from my friends on the album.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna ask if you have the same set amount of musicians on like the multiplayer big band albums, but that makes a lot of sense that you would want to incorporate different people, especially Emmanuel, who,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, we both know him. I think it's crazy that we connected on Twitter, yet we were at Belmont at the exact same time, basically. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I was at Belmont as an adjunct
Mm-hmm.
instructor from I can't remember exact years, maybe 2014 or
Mm-hmm.
2015.
Yeah.
And I taught commercial trumpet and a couple classes, and Emmanuel was one of my
Mm-hmm.
students. And even back then, he was extremely gifted, and
Yeah.
he's just like one of those complete naturals. He had like some like rough around the edges things I could help him with, but I was like, this, he's got the chops, he's got the
Mm-hmm.
face, he's got the ear. It's just gonna, once he smooths out a few things, I knew he was gonna be destined for greatness.
Yeah.
And he's had such a wonderful career since. I've been so proud of him, and slightly intimidated how great he sounds.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to use him on a track, so he plays on the Sonic tune on Critical Hits, and then he
Mm-hmm.
plays on the opening of the new album. And both solos are just blazing amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely like a celebrity at Belmont for all of us because he was outside playing every single day.
yeah.
And he just brought so much joy into our
Mhm.
lives just being there playing. To the point where on the rare occasions where he wasn't playing, we were like, is something wrong? Like, is he okay?
Mhm.
We would get like worried about him,
Right.
just because he was so dedicated. And but yeah, he's great. And it was just a pleasant surprise to see him in that video because I was like, oh my gosh, like I know him. That's so
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, Nashville is such a small world, especially for the music industry, the entertainment industry. So
Hmm.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then speaking more on the videos that you post on YouTube for the covers, I wanted to talk about the editing for that.
Hmm.
Do you edit those videos as well?
Yeah, I try.
Okay, well, as an editor, I'm super impressed with the work that goes into that. I'm sure it takes a really long time.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
feel like with each one I get a little faster and I learn one new thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was basically like when the pandemic hit, you know, I was still in the Navy band and we weren't working much because we couldn't come in the base.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just a lot of time for me to try stuff. And I said, I've always wanted to learn video editing.
Mm-hmm.
I said, surely I can figure out the basics. So I just used every new video to try to learn kind of like, and then each new video, you like get your system a little tighter, get a little more efficient, get a better eye for things that maybe the previous video, like some of the Critical Hits videos, there's just like minor things that I'm noticing now, like lighting or maybe like border. It's just random stuff, how the cut is. And so like every video I just try to improve a little bit and get it
Mm-hmm.
good enough.
Yeah.
And do no harm, I guess. I don't have the chops to do anything really spectacular. I've considered, if I ever got a budget to really hire someone to make these videos really great, but
Mm-hmm.
not in the cards yet.
I mean, I gotta say, like, I'm really, really impressed with how they turn out. Like, especially with how many musicians are involved. Like, that's just a lot of coordination. I just am curious, like, how long does the process usually take from, composing the song to posting it on YouTube? Like, ballpark, how long does that process typically take?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess if I had to ballpark it, it probably takes 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I write really fast, and that's not necessarily any brag on my skill. It's just that I'm antsy and I don't like to take my time.
Mm-hmm.
So the writing, if I can sit down and get time, I could maybe jam out an arrangement in 2, 3 days, maybe less, maybe a week on average.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point, it's formatting the parts, and then I have to make a play along mock up in Logic
Mm-hmm.
so people can play along with. And then it's like to get the best sound, I record in a specific order. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
just send the play along to everyone at once because I want so I'll play the lead trumpet part and so everyone can follow, my style and
Mm-hmm.
intonation. And then I'll usually get drums second because I think drums are like the building blocks.
Oh yeah.
And then from there I'll get lead alto, lead trombone, and then I'll start filling out the sections. So because of that kind of hierarchy we record in, it
Mm-hmm.
does take more time because I don't want to get the rest of the saxophones until I get lead alto. And if the lead alto
Right.
player can't get to it for a week or two, that can slow things down.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say in general, it probably takes 4 weeks for everyone to get their parts in. And then I'm just sort of like editing and mixing as I get parts. So
Mm-hmm.
by the time I get the last stem, I'm pretty close. And I'm also like, I have like a master shot of the band that I'm syncing all the videos to. So
Mm-hmm.
once I get a new one, I just find their spot, drop it in, sync it. And then from there, I can create all the different shots.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a system like once I finally get everything, I've already done a lot of work. And then at that point, it's like, okay, finish the mix, send it off for mastering. And while it's getting mastered, just like edit a video and maybe edit a video in, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, 20 hours or something.
Still a lot of time, but that's pretty
It
that's
takes a
pretty
while.
impressive. Yeah, it does. I can imagine it takes a long time. But again, they are amazing, and I know how time consuming that is. So, and then in terms of like just creating a song, like composing it and recording it and all of that stuff, what would you say is the most time consuming part of that whole process? Like, would it be the recording or the arrangement or the mastering?
I think the recording,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the aforementioned, like the order, right?
Yeah.
Like I think there are some folks who don't care about the order, but like, when you record jazz, especially remotely, like you do lose something because I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of the music, that style of music really benefits from having everyone playing together in the
Mm-hmm.
real time with the interaction. But in big band music, you can have like more specifically composed sections. But even then, I think like in general, if you're playing in a big band and you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting on the, trumpet three chair, for instance,
Yeah.
your role in the ensemble is to match the lead trumpet player, how they style, how they phrase, where their intonate, maybe their intonation sits a little high.
Mm-hmm.
And well, you don't like how it's sharp. It's not your, you have to
Yeah.
go there because that's where it goes. It's like if you're singing a choir. I remember singing a choir last year and I was singing bass one.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time in my life, I had to follow other people. I wasn't the top voice. And
Yeah.
it was like, oh yeah, like soprano, that's our lead trumpet. And
Mm-hmm.
so that helps, I think. If we didn't do it that way, it would go faster, but it would probably we would lose something.
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky. It's a tricky balance because obviously remote music loses something, but also we gain like more granular control,
Mm-hmm.
like which is kind of interesting too. So I don't know. It's pros and cons. But yeah, I would say the recording
Mm-hmm.
definitely takes the longest.
Yeah, I feel like especially with social media and everything, there's such an endless amount of musicians that are like showcasing their talent. Like I follow so many video game
Hmm.
cover artists that are just incredible. Is it more convenient to be able to create music that way where people are sending you their files of their parts, or would it be better if you could get everybody in the studio for certain sessions? But yeah, I definitely am sure it has its pros and cons for both.
Yeah, I mean the latter thing you suggested,
Hmm.
having everyone in the studio. There, I think my first three records in the Timer Band
Hmm.
was everyone in the room playing the tunes together with live solos, and there's just a certain energy and dynamicism,
Hmm.
dynamicsism. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
You
I know
know,
what you're saying.
and so that you get from that. But it's very tricky because, for instance, if everyone's playing live, so like live solos are like kind of contentious
Hmm.
because a lot of soloists don't want to play their solos live because, for instance, say there are horn backgrounds behind the solos.
Hmm.
So you're playing live, everyone's in the room, so people are bleeding in each other's mics, and the tenor player, he's 32 bars in a solo and it's just ridiculous, great solo, and then suddenly the trumpets come in 4 bars and just completely screw up their part. So it's in like, okay, we can't fix that unless we also redo the tenor saxophone solo there. And then the tenor
Yeah.
player's like, well, I should have just overdubbed it. So like there's trade-offs. It's like a high risk, high reward for me.
Hmm.
There was actually a moment on one of my tracks in the Tomer Big Band where uh There were like 8 bars where the trumpets just totally ate it. And the tenor soloist was the late Doug Moffat, who passed away, unfortunately, I
Oh.
think 2 years ago.
Hmm.
But he's playing a really great solo, and about 8 bars in, or sorry, there was this 8 bar background. The trumpets kind of biffed it for a little bit.
Hmm.
So unfortunately, we had to like have him play in the middle of a solo while they punched it. It still sounds great,
Hmm.
but he was a little kerfuffled about that. And but then like there was another moment where I remember the solo was good, and like someone came in a bar too early,
Hmm.
and I was like, you know what? It's fine. We'll just leave that mistake in because the solo was so strong and the energy was so right. I'm
Hmm.
gonna leave that mistake in because that was just a time. That's just like a snapshot of that time.
Yeah.
And the listener is not gonna be like jamming out to the solo and be like, "Oh, trombone three came in early." They're gonna be like, "Oh, this solo is so great." They're like in the moment, and then
Right.
maybe like on the 10th listen, they'll notice, "Oh, is that did trombone three come in early? That's kind of funny."
Yeah.
That's my philosophy at least. It's like a balance, right? But
Yeah.
I think live in the studio has so much potential to really bring that energy that I love.
Hmm.
Honestly, Mandy, what I always wanted to do,
Hmm.
and maybe I'll do this one year, is to do a live album, as in like live at a venue and record it.
Yeah.
That's where I really think big band
Hmm.
really thrives. Like do like 3 sets over like a week
Yeah.
and just record every set and then pick the best takes.
Hmm.
That's what I would love to do, but one day.
I was definitely going to ask you if you would ever consider doing like a tour of some
Oh
kind. I'm
man,
sure you. I'm sure
can't
you would.
afford it. It would be a
But
lot of fun.
yeah,
Just I'm just thinking logistics.
it's a lot.
It's so well, it's already hard enough to get musicians period on the road just
Hmm.
because like it's an opportunity cost, right? You're on
Yeah.
the road, it's like when I'm on the road, I can't be doing work in town.
Hmm.
But also like people with families or just like being home.
Yeah.
There's that opportunity cost. So it's just hard. I know the 8 Big Band somehow brings like he'll bring like his drummer and his lead alto and his
Hmm.
lead trumpet, and they'll go to towns and hire local bands to supplement and play.
Yeah.
And I saw the 8 Big Band in DC area where I live, and it
Oh,
was great.
cool.
But I don't think he can afford to like bring out his entire
Hmm.
like band that's in the studio sessions. It's just probably can't. It's not practical.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that would be killing. I really would love to play this multiplayer band stuff live
Hmm.
because I really, when I lived in Nashville, loved playing live with my band,
Yeah.
playing the original music, which had a niche audience, but I
Hmm.
feel like the arrangements of this game stuff people really love, and I would just love to play it live. I think it would blow people away, especially like if compared to the record, it would just have way more energy. Way like I think people would really love it. So hopefully one day the multiplayer band will get a chance to play
Yeah.
live.
People have really been discovering this love for video game music like myself. And honestly, like I mentioned before, I'm a huge Sonic and Zelda fan, and Mario has always kind of like flown under the radar for me. Like I've always appreciated it as a
Hmm.
franchise, but it never really came close to how I feel about like Sonic and Zelda music.
Hmm.
But when I started listening to the 8-bit big band, it sort of allowed me to rediscover this love that I maybe once had as a kid for Mario,
Hmm.
and just an appreciation for the music, because Mario is definitely meant for the big band genre.
Yeah.
Just the way that it's composed, it's like it's perfect for that genre. So I just think it's really cool how, I don't know, I feel like video game music has gotten really popular, especially with
Hmm.
social media and everything. So that's really exciting. Going on, you've performed with a lot of icons like Aretha Franklin and Idina Menzel and people like that. What was that like for you? And do you have any advice for other musicians or artists that might find themselves in the same situation as you?
Yeah, the Aretha Franklin gig.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so this was billed as the Nashville Symphony with
Mm-hmm.
Aretha Franklin, but it was technically like a smaller group of hired guns.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple symphony players. I want to say it was like a rhythm section and maybe like 8 horns
Mm-hmm.
and a couple strings. And yeah, she did a concert at the Skirmahorn. That was cool. She was pretty odd and eccentric, if I
Really?
recall correctly. We ended with like what we ended with the song "There's No Business Like Show Business," which is like this old musical tune from the 30s, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly, I feels like I'm making this up, but we're like playing it, and it's just like going on, and like clowns are running on stage. It sounds like I'm making this up. Maybe I was in a fever dream, but it was an
Maybe.
odd gig. The Idina Menzel gig was just another like hired gun thing.
Mm-hmm.
She played at I can't remember. It's like at the end of like gosh, I've lived in Nashville in so long, but that
Hmm.
Broadway at the very end on that perpendicular street, there's like that little stadium like arena place,
Hmm.
music venue. I can't remember what it's called. But it was basically a thing where she came to town with her traveling band, and then they hire locals. I actually was subbing on that gig because the regular couldn't do it, so
Mm.
me and my wife played that gig. And you say like you play with these artists, and yeah, it is technically true. I was on the stage and played a gig, but she like acknowledged us. I think on one tune, she came back and shook all our hands. It was very cordial and friendly, and that
Hmm.
gig was great. Obviously, I love Wicked. I love Frozen. I
Hmm.
think she's a killing singer.
Yeah.
We played some cool arrangements. She was just a great on the stage. I mean, she's a total pro, right?
Hmm.
Just showmanship
Yeah.
and stage presentation, and obviously the chops, the consistency to nail those belting high notes. That was great.
Hmm.
As far as advice, I just tell everyone just like, well, the first thing is you just got to be really, really good at what you do. I
Hmm.
think the highest dedication to your craft is really paramount.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. At a pro high level, I feel like everyone is just assumed to be at a very high level at their whatever they do, whether it's you're a trumpet player, you're a
Hmm.
woodwind musician, you're a vocalist, you're a drummer, whatever, you're a arranger. So, just getting really good at what you do and
Hmm.
having a versatile skill set. And then, just being a nice person. I think soft skills are very important in our business.
Hmm.
Like we connected, and we realized that we knew a lot of the same people. So
Yeah.
it's a very small business. And if you're kind of an asshole, word will get around. And so
Right.
um, I think when you're young, especially when I was young, the lessons I had to really learn quickly was that my job when I was stepping into a new gig as a sub or like a new hire was just to make it feel like nothing had changed. Like the
Hmm.
vibe was not going to be suddenly weird because I was there. And I wasn't going to come in and sort of like change everything and do my thing. I was just there to make the music feel good and do my job
Hmm.
and make everyone feel like, oh, it's cool that Tyler's here. Nothing feels different. You know what
Hmm.
I'm trying to say? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not there to like really like shake it up. But
Hmm.
and then my teacher used to always tell me like the best compliment you're gonna get. People won't be like, "Oh, you sound great." The best compliment you'll get is they'll just call you back.
Right.
And so it's hard because it's especially in today's age. Like I love social media. I love getting like dopamine flares with
Yep.
all like tweets and YouTube stuff. I love it. I
Hmm.
mean, I'm an egomaniac. Of course, I love it.
I think you kind of
But
have to be in the entertainment industry a little bit.
oh,
I
sure,
hate to
sure,
admit it,
sure.
but
Yeah, yeah,
you
for
know.
sure. But just being good at what you do and being easy to be around and
Hmm.
enjoyable to be around. I mean, and then people want to work with you. When I came to Nashville, I got a lot of opportunities very early in my career. I was very fortunate,
Hmm.
and I did well in those opportunities. And people who had sway, people who played lead trumpet or had any sort of input, like, oh, who do you want in your trumpet section? I was like, oh, get Tyler. He reads well. He's a nice guy. He's
Hmm.
cool to be around. He's not weird. And it
Yeah.
sounds so mean to say he's not weird, but like, there are people who are kind of weird,
Yeah.
and working with them can kind of suck.
Hmm.
Especially if you have to get on a tour bus with them or you have to stand next to them for a long time.
Hmm.
The last thing you want to be thinking about is like, what's this guy or gal like? Why are they weird? Like this is making me the vibe feels off, and
Hmm.
that's so soft skills.
Yeah.
I'm not a particularly like extroverted person, so like those are things you just have to figure out
Hmm.
and just be yourself, of course. Like you
Yeah.
you can usually tell when someone's like putting on an act, I feel.
Hmm.
Like I think like to me, I never like to feel that someone's coming to me for some purely transactional thing.
Yeah.
I feel like you can usually sniff that out pretty quickly. But if someone was coming to me to make like a genuine relationship and like or just wanted to like really like hang, then that's great.
Hmm.
I'm into that with anyone really. Like I think and you're not coming to me to get something from me. It's just like, "Hey, what do you do? I want to know what you do,"
Hmm.
or like what's play and whatever. That's cool, genuine.
Yeah.
You can sniff out the phonies. So don't be a phony, be really good,
Yeah.
and don't be weird. Yeah, I guess that's my advice.
Don't be a weirdo. And I mean, as a musician and a performer too, I feel like that can really mess up the vibe of the performance as well, especially if you're touring.
Yeah.
Um, you need to be able to kind of like riff sometimes. So
Yeah.
if you don't have full trust in each other and you don't know what that person's going to maybe do, then it kind of adds a bit of stress to the performance. And so that's very valid advice.
Yeah, that's a great point actually, what you
Mm.
just said. That's well said. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
totally. You gotta have trust with people, right?
Yeah.
Like that's really what the music business is. It's a business about trust
Hmm.
and relationships.
Yeah.
And I would always, and I guess if one last caveat, I mean,
Hmm.
I'm not that old. I'm in my mid 30s, but like one thing I always had to tell myself is like you got to play the long game. Like really at the end of the day, like social media is great and you can use it in such amazing ways to
Hmm.
brand yourself, to expand your reach. But at the end of the day, the music business is really a business about
Hmm.
relationships and trust. You
Yeah.
know this. You have people that you have genuine relationships with that you trust their musicianship
Hmm.
so that at any point they say, "Hey, Mandy, I need a trumpet player." And you're like, I know this guy Tyler. I know he's going to sound great. I trust him.
Yeah.
And then people that trust you will trust me,
Right. Right.
right? And so when someone would ask me like, "Hey, I need a X and X," and I say, "I know this you know, Allie Haney's a great trumpet player.
Hmm.
She will sound incredible in the section. I 100% guarantee." And like I'm banking my that person's trust in me
Hmm.
that what I'm saying is true. But if you know, it's really a business about trust and relationships. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's not. I mean, it sounds so like Machiavellian, but it's really quite simple, right?
It's true because I mean, and the same thing if you like recommend somebody to another person and then they end up, not showing up for work, and then it's like, okay, I'm not going to recommend that person anymore. So it is really, contingent
Yeah,
on showing up.
yeah, and yeah, showing up, it also like could have like a transitive property. It could like make you look bad. It's like,
Exactly.
well, Mandy recommended this person. They totally flaked. What does that say about Mandy?
Mm-hmm.
It so yeah. I mean, at the highest levels, I think most people got that stuff together.
Yeah.
And the people who don't are usually frustrated and they don't understand why they're not getting opportunities. And, the music business isn't fair for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like some people will get things and you might think it's not fair, but it's what it is. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, like most of the people that are getting gigs can cut those gigs and they're nice people and they're pleasant to be around.
I studied film in school, so it's
Mm,
it's the same thing with the film industry. If you aren't a team player and you don't have the right attitude, you just won't be asked to come back the next day. So,
yeah.
just entertainment wise, like it's all the same. You've got to be a good person, you have to be easy to work with, you have to be early. Or
Yeah.
you won't be asked to come back. So,
Yeah, it's so collaborative in film too. Like every person is so crucial to making a film. You can't
mhm,
like a director of film is not, right? You can't just
mhm,
that's important, but
yeah.
a direct like I can't make music without musicians. A
Mhm.
director can't make music without actors and editors and camera people and all the I mean I'm not in the film business, but
That's true though. And but at the same time, everyone is incredibly replaceable. So
mm, mm,
that showing up and being somebody that people want to work with is especially crucial.
right, yeah.
So, how did you first get into big band music? Were you always into that like as a kid, or did you have a moment later on where you fell in love with it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I wasn't exposed to big band music until high school.
Mhm.
My freshman year of high school. I didn't go out for the jazz band for some reason. I think
Mhm.
I talked myself out of it.
Yeah.
And this sounds so silly, but we were playing our Christmas concert, holiday concert, and the jazz band would open up for the wind ensemble, which I played in the wind band.
Mhm.
And the jazz band opened up with this like swinging arrangement of Jingle Bells. And it was like, if I heard it now, I'd probably be like, oh, that's kind of corny. But when I heard that, Annie, I was like, oh my God, I got to do that. Like it blew me away. And I can still remember like the introduction. Like I could like sing you what every part did.
Mhm.
And so I joined jazz band and like I immediately was like, I want to write for the jazz band. I don't know how to do
Mhm.
that, but I wrote a chart and I completely intuited everything. Now there were like tons of errors and there was a lot of nonsense, but the jazz band read it and they played it at a gig. And so
Wow.
I think that was kind of where I got the bug. It's kind of
Yeah.
funny because just today, my jazz band director from high school, which was like in 2003,
Mhm.
texted me randomly, which I hadn't talked to him in years. So it's kind of funny how that works out.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
He was randomly texting me something about Big Man. He asked me a
Mhm.
question about how I would if you did a big band, how would you seat your trumpet players or something like that. Anyways, he played my chart. He didn't have to do that. He actually, I remember at the rehearsal, I brought it in and he was like reading it. He's like, okay. And I was like, got to the solo section. He was like, he's looking at the chord change. He's like, what are you trying to do here exactly? I was like, oh, I was trying to write a blues, but I don't really know how to do that. He goes, don't worry. And he turned to rhythm section. He goes, hey y'all, when you get to the letter C, just play a blues. And they played a blues and they like made it sound great.
Wow.
It was crazy. He could have just been like, because I literally had no idea what I was doing. I was
Uh-huh.
like, I don't know how to write a blues. Like, I've heard of blues, but I don't know what the chords are or how they go.
Hmm.
So he just made it happen for me. And they played the chart and they made it sound really good. And I was like, all right, this is fun. I want to do more of this.
Yeah.
And so I then ended up going to University of North Texas in Denton, which is like a big school for big band jazz,
Hmm.
probably the top school in the country for specifically big band. And I wrote a lot of charts there, and I played, lead trumpet in the top band, the 1 o'clock lab band, which
Hmm.
is like a pretty prestigious university band
Yeah.
with a lot of industry people that have come out of there. Yeah, and then from there, I just loved it. I started my first big band in 2013,
Hmm.
Tommy Big Band, when I was still in Denton. We did one album, and then I moved to Nashville, and then I restarted my band out in Nashville and
Hmm.
and just stacked the band with like the best players in town. It just kind of was like I was like 25. I was just
Hmm.
like calling random people, "Hey, you want to play in my band?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, kid." And then they show up to the first rehearsal, and I got so lucky they really dug it, and
Hmm.
so people were like, "Okay, I'm into doing this." And I mean, I had the most stacked players in the band, in the town, in this band, like uh, Steve Patrick on lead trumpet, who's like
Hmm.
the top call trumpet player, all these greats. And so we did two albums with that band, and we had like a residency at this club called the Family Wash, which I
Hmm.
don't know if that's still around in Nashville now.
I I don't know. It sounds familiar, but I haven't personally seen it, so
Okay.
maybe. But
I had
I'll
heard
look
maybe
into
it
it.
had closed down, and then
Hmm.
hearing it might be coming back. But anyway, we played at a couple venues. There was
Hmm.
Third and Lindsley. We played at a couple
Oh yeah, yeah.
times. Then we played at this was before the new like Rudy's or whatever,
Hmm.
because I think Rudy's opened after I left. We played at Third and Lindsley, and then there was this venue in the Gulch called the Cave, which we played for like 4 or 5 months.
Hmm.
The late Jim Williamson, who was the director of the Nashville Jazz Orchestra,
Hmm.
he got this venue because he really wanted to find a jazz venue. So his band would play every week or once a month. My band would play once a month,
Hmm.
and some other groups. That venue didn't really ever super take off,
Hmm.
and then we found the Family Wash, and we played there for like 7 months before I left to go in the Navy. That was killing. We would
Hmm.
like pack that house for like,
Wow.
and you think Nashville, like who's gonna come here jazz in Nashville? But we would like pack the club
Yeah.
with like 150 people of really enthusiastic, and it had like a ton of energy in the
Hmm.
club. It was so exciting. I
Wow.
remember like really loving those gigs and really those were like some of the musical highlights of my life,
Hmm.
honestly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and
Well,
then I just kept doing it. Went to the Navy band, played in the big band in the Navy
hmm.
for 5 years. So it's been a lot of big band in my life.
Yeah. Well, you obviously love it. We love it, so that's great.
I love and hate it. It's weird.
I think that's a normal, a healthy relationship to have with something that you're passionate
Right.
about. Like I do a lot of social media stuff, so of course, like I love it on one hand, but also it's horrible for me. So it's
Yeah,
like
right.
finding that balance, you know. Same with gaming. It's not the best thing for you, but I love it. So, but yeah, Nashville. I think you know there's so much country music everywhere
Right.
that whenever there's something different, people really gravitate towards that. And there's a lot of pockets of, or like sort of like subcultures of genres of music. Like the indie pop scene is huge here. You know, a lot of indie pop bands get their start in Nashville or they live here, they're recording here. So I think that probably explains why, you know, people loved the big band vibe so much because it's something different, you know, and
Yeah.
I feel like Nashville can get a little bit oversaturated with the honky tonk and the country. Not that there's
Yeah.
anything really wrong with that. It's just
Sure.
there's a lot of it. So that's really cool. You are also in game development as well. Something Classic is the
hmm
studio. You guys make JRPGs, right?
hmm hmm
Okay, awesome. And then what has been your favorite game that you've worked on there?
Well, let's see. So We published two games.
Mm-hmm.
The first was a game I was directly involved with developing a game called Shadows of Adam,
Mm-hmm.
which came out in 2017, which is a JRPG. And for listeners who aren't familiar with that term,
Mm-hmm.
it basically stands for a Japanese style RPG role-playing game.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into the wonky history of what makes a Japanese
Yeah.
RPG different than a Western RPG. Just know that it's a type of style of RPG that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, especially of my age, maybe mid to late 30s, grew up playing. Final Fantasy VI is a JRPG.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Shadows of Adam was in 2017, and then a couple of people from our team formed a sister studio called Retro Games, which I
Mm-hmm.
was not involved with, but we published their first game called Pillars of Dust,
Mm-hmm.
and in I believe 2020, it like came out the week after lockdown happened. It was kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then currently Something Classic is working on a game called Quartet, which is another Japanese style RPG that's kind of a spiritual successor to Shadows of Adam. But as far as favorite, I guess I would say Shadows of Adam. I mean, that's the first game I ever launched. It's on the PC, it's on the Switch, it's
Mm-hmm.
on the PlayStation 4. It sold a decent amount of copies. We have gotten a lot of cool opportunities from it. Basically any gig I've gotten as a writer for games has come from Shadows of Adam.
Cool.
Um, and it's, when we started Something Classic in 2013, we had no idea what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
We had dabbled in amateur game development as teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of reconnected in 2013 and tried to do it professionally. And we just sort of stumbled into the game getting done. We got it done. We ran a Kickstarter. I think we raised about $22,000, and found a little niche fandom for the game. And I'm always been super grateful for that. And I learned a lot about game audio too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you make songs loop correctly? Like, that
Yeah.
sounds so basic, but I struggled with that because I didn't know any other game composers. I didn't know. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I can write music, but like, there's like technological things with game audio you have to figure out. And
Right.
so it was like a big, painful learning experience for me
Yeah.
because I was not part of the community. I didn't know anything. I was on like this island of ignorance.
Right.
So in retrospect, I should have like found my people back
Mm-hmm.
then and hey, how do you help me? But I
Yeah.
didn't because I was stupid.
Well, whereas now, like, there's so many video game composers that,
Oh yeah.
like Marcus Hedges, who I am a huge fan of his work.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that's somebody that I know you're connected with as well.
Wait, do you need a composer?
Do I need a
Sorry,
composer?
that's the joke. That's the
Oh.
joke. The joke in the game audio community is that every game audio composer is always asking everyone if they need a composer
Oh my gosh.
because it's very, very saturated.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, on one hand, it's cool to get help when you need it, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can pretty much go on Twitter and find the answer to any question that you might have. So, I think that's pretty cool. Um,
Yeah.
how did you first get into composing video game music? Like, how did you sort of transition from, because you were doing like just jazz arrangements and then you started doing video game music? So,
Yeah.
how'd you get into that?
That's a great question. Like I said, something Shadows of Adam was the first
Hmm.
professional game I had done, and I had sort of kind of mentioned that I had done like amateur game development.
Hmm.
So in my teenage years, there was a really big community built around this program called RPG Maker, which was not without going into the whole history of it, was basically an illegally translated Japanese software that came to
Hmm.
the United States that we all illegally downloaded and made RPGs using it. And a lot of times you would just download music from other video games and use it in your game.
Hmm.
But when I was like 15 or 16, I was like, wait, I could just write the music. So I wrote a lot of the music for those games, just kind of cutting my teeth. And basically all I tried to do at the time was just write music that sounded like the music I liked in other games.
Hmm.
Games like FF6 and other Final Fantasies, Zelda, Mario,
Yeah.
etc. And I guess I kind of still do that. But so yeah, that was kind of my first taste of it. And then when I went to college, I studied jazz studies and I
Hmm.
really committed myself for 6 years of like becoming like a really good trumpet player and a jazz arranger. And then when I got out, that's kind of when Something Classic started and
Hmm.
then got into that professionally. And since 2013, I have scored or worked on a dozen or so different games. And it's just like a slow. That's like one I have like the long view on, like really
Hmm.
trying to build this long career out of that. And for me, I just like it's crazy, Mandy. Like when I was an undergrad in 2006, I was composition major before I was a jazz studies major,
Hmm.
and I don't recall anyone in my class talking or aspiring to be a game composer. It just wasn't on our radar. I think this
Interesting.
was right. It was kind of always in my mind that I wanted to do it because I
Hmm.
loved video games. I mean, I was the kid that when Final Fantasy VII came out, I like just became a hermit, and my parents had to come and say like, "Hey Tyler, you need to get outside. It's the summer." And I was
Yeah.
like 13. It was bad, but it was also great.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I was like, I want to do this, but no one else I knew my age did it, and I had no idea how to get into it.
Hmm.
So I just sort of set that aside. But now at age of 34, I'm getting my doctorate at George Mason,
Hmm.
and we have these uh, composition forums where every composition student from undergrad to doctoral student like meets on Mondays and shares what we're working on.
Hmm.
And every undergrad, without fail, brings in game audio, talks about how they want to be a game composer
Hmm.
and wants to do it. It's crazy how in 16 years that has just changed so much.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting, but also incredibly intimidating because me as in like an elder millennial, I see Gen Z with all this creative energy and really like they're just really savvy with the tech. Like remember
Yeah.
I mentioned like I just spent like 4 years working on Shadows Vibe, not knowing anything,
Hmm.
learning how to mix myself, making every mistake you could possibly make, learning how to use a DAW for the first time
Hmm.
because I was stupid and didn't know anyone. Gen Z's coming in with a massive advantage because y'all are just really technologically familiar with it
Hmm.
and for better, I think. So I'm always so blown away and inspired by the next generation. I'm always like, man, I got to keep up with these guys
Hmm.
because they really know their stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think something happened in the last 10 years. Everyone wants to be a game composer. It's kind of
Yeah.
crazy, and it's a really competitive and saturated business,
Hmm.
for better or worse. There's good
Yeah.
and bad about it, for
Yeah,
sure.
like I mentioned before, I really do feel like video game music has just gotten super, super popular, especially like you said, like composing video game music as well. And I think it might have a lot to do with that accessibility to all these
Right.
resources and YouTube, and like now we also have masterclass where we've got people from, the video game industry teaching master classes. So
Mm,
I just think, it's we have so many resources for that, and that's probably why we've seen an influx of video game composers. But I also, like, I love video games, so I can't be mad about about it being oversaturated, because it's just like, cool, more video game content.
yeah.
uh,
It's really like the music of this next generation. I
mhm.
think millennials and Gen Z, we share this in common.
Mhm.
I don't know what generation you belong. Maybe it doesn't matter. I think about this a lot when I became a dad. For
Mhm.
some reason, like I'm always thinking about it. I don't know why. But it's weird. Like you think about, I guess now that I've had a few years outside of my 20s, I can
Mhm.
kind of look at my 20s as this like separate entity. Like that's a different Tyler.
Yep.
It's very strange. But anywho, I imagine when you're like 80, it's even
Oh
crazier.
my god, yeah.
Can you believe it?
I don't want to think about it.
But anyways, yeah, it's like because like I know so many people of my generation, like we just love these games, especially
Mhm.
Japanese RPGs were like a very niche genre that sort of blew up in the mid 90s. And that really was like the um the big influence for a lot of people in my generation. But
Mhm.
like this newer generation just I think also a part of it was culturally in the 90s there were guys and gals who loved the video games, but like we kind of kept it a secret. Like when
Yeah.
I was working on RPG Maker in high school, I mean, I was already embarrassed enough to be in band. You
Mhm.
just got made fun of for being in band, which
Yep.
is kind of ridiculous. So I didn't tell anyone. None of my friends in real life knew that I had this whole like secret life on RPG Maker. I was like on forums. I had like a
Mhm.
screen name, like an alias, and so I didn't tell anyone about that. I was way too embarrassed. But now like kids are just like so open and like non-judgmental. They just like, oh, you make video games, that's so cool. And like
Yeah.
I love that they have that because I didn't. And maybe that's why they're so much further along too, because it's just more ubiquitous.
Yeah.
People are, oh, video game music's cool, and like, oh, you do video game music, that's so
Mhm.
great. Like if I had told people, I would be like so embarrassed when I was
Yeah.
younger.
Yeah, I will say I was born in 95. So
Okay.
when I was a kid, I I definitely felt like being really really into video games was still like considered nerdy and like not
Sure.
cool and a waste of
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
I have always been super obsessed with the Sonic Adventure 2 soundtrack. That's like my thing. It's on my on repeat
Mm.
on Spotify. So, which is kind of embarrassing, but at the same time, it's like now that has become super popular. Like that genre of music, it's sort of like
Right.
ska, butt rock, I guess you would call it. Um, but
Yeah.
I just, yeah, it means so much to me because it's kind of my introduction into gaming, Sonic Adventure 2,
Mhm.
and also my introduction into just loving video game music. And I think it was the first soundtrack that I actually learned the lyrics to, like the songs. I
Ah.
was like 8 when it came out, maybe 7. Um, so at the time, I felt really embarrassed because I loved it so much, but I felt like I was so weird for being
Oh
so
yeah.
into it. And now, I still, get made fun of a little bit for being super into it, but I do feel like it's more accepted and understood now to be that into it. So,
I
um,
think so too.
you know,
There's I mean there's whole conferences that are just around game music. Like there's
hmm
one coming up in January in DC,
hmm
MagFest, Music and Gaming Festival.
yeah,
And like people like lose their mind like when they hear these bands on stage, or
hmm
it's kind of really cool that people like have found their people, so to
hmm
speak, right? I mean that's what every kid wants when they're younger, right? They want to find people that are as passionate about the things they are as them. And
yeah,
I never found those. I had one friend in high school or in junior high that like loved Japanese RPGs as much as I
hmm
did. That was it. You know,
yeah,
the rest of it was just like this kind of secret. And so,
yeah,
yeah, I think that's really wonderful that people a little younger than us have been able to find that, and
hmm
it's just a more accepting experience for them.
yeah,
Um, and they sort of also like just have like it's funny, like I grew up I was born in 1987, so like my first gaming experience that I can remember was like watching my older brother and sister play the original Super Mario Bros on
hmm
Nintendo, and then like playing like Mario 3 came out in, like 89 90. And so like that's like what I think of like my formative gaming experiences.
yeah,
So when I think of like retro, that's what I think. But then I talk to like people that are in the undergrad at the school I go to, and they're like talking about like the Wii Shop music. Well, I'm like, man, Wii Shop came out when I was like in an undergrad in college. Like,
yeah.
start feeling really old.
Yeah, yeah, talking to like people in their even their early 20s, I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like
Yeah.
what these games just keep getting pumped out and I just can't keep up. So I always just kind of cling to like my nostalgic games. Although I've been playing Sonic Frontiers this week and I am incredibly impressed.
Yeah, is it good?
It's the first Sonic game in a very long time where I feel like they spent a little bit more time on it.
Mm.
The music in that game is incredible, and
Mm.
I've heard that they're releasing a 6-part soundtrack with 150 songs in December. So, what I've heard so far, I love it. It's very Breath of the Wild, but I'm super into that. So, it's been really exciting. Yeah, Sonic in general, it's been a great few years, I think. And
Yeah.
they're also doing the 30th anniversary symphony concert live. They're doing a tour. I don't know when. I think
Oh
it's in the next
wow.
year or so. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's another thing that's really exciting about being alive right now.
Sonic's having like a like straight up renaissance, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because Sonic was huge when I was a kid.
Mhm.
Because when Sega was like the first real competitor for Nintendo, and
Mhm.
when Sonic came out in 90 91, whenever it
Mhm.
was, that was like game changing. It felt
Yeah.
like light years ahead of where Mario was, and the music was killing, and the game was like so fast, and it was like
Yeah.
marketed to little kids of that generation, like so fast and
Yeah.
blast processing. But then there was kind of like this dark ages for Sonic, I feel
Mhm.
like, where it got kind of cringe and weird.
Yep.
And then like in the last 4 or 5 years, with like the movies actually being good, and like I'm like, Sonic's like cool again?
Yeah. Well, I think what has changed is that they have given more creative control to people that grew up playing the games. Like the everyone involved in the movie making process, a lot of those people, they're fans of Sonic. And
Yeah.
I think Sega's finally seeing that when they let um less corporate people kind of take control, it's like amazing things can really happen. And especially this last movie, it was dedicated to the fans for sure. Like they made so
Right.
many nods and references to older games like Sonic Adventure 2. I'm just like a huge fan of that game. But yeah, it's like they've been killing it, and I think it's because they're allowing more people who are not, you know, directly affiliated with Sega to kind of take control. Especially with this last anniversary concert. Some an artist that they collaborated with was Nate Wants to Battle. He had done a full Sonic cover album like a few years before, and then they asked him to perform
Oh, snap.
2 songs in the concert. And so I think that they're doing more stuff like that, and it's really working because people feel like they're being heard, you know, like the fans. So I think that they're learning that, and I think moving forward they're just going to do more of that, and it's going to get better and better.
Well, hopefully, when they do their big Sonic Big Band
Yeah,
concert, they give me a call.
I'm sure they will. I mean,
I mean, probably
yeah,
not gonna happen, but I would love that.
I
Yeah,
I think never say never,
never say
especially
never.
these days. And as an artist and as a creative, how do you stay inspired and motivated? Like, what do you do? Do you listen to certain soundtracks? Do you have a routine that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard in my phase of life right now because my son's 2.
Mm-hmm.
I got another one on the way. I'm a full-time student and I freelance all the time. My wife's a freelance musician, so
Mm-hmm.
like, time is so precious. But for me, just taking the first step to do like write new music is always what helps me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's always so hard at first. But I find that when I kind of just say, okay, Tyler, today we're going to write. You're going to write something and not judge it. Because, like, a lot of times when you're first writing, I call it you're just sort of crapping out all the bad ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, that's important. You just write and you get it and you don't judge it. And then put it down on paper. And then I come back, the next day, and I usually am seeing okay, I can use this, I can work with this,
Yeah.
and that will like get me inspired. But specifically, I love when I do stuff with musicians and I get the email that they send their part in, and I pull
Mm-hmm.
their WAV file, and I get really excited. That inspires me.
Yeah.
But there's like I just got a new car and it has a working CD player. My other car didn't, and so now like I've been like I have like tons of CDs.
Mm-hmm.
So lately I've just been like listening to all my favorite like big band CDs, and that like is super pumping me up. As
Yeah.
both a writer and a drum player, I've been listening to this great bass player Christian McBride
Mm-hmm.
for years. He just played in small groups, but he did a couple big band records. And I've been listening to those lately, and they're just so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like so inspired. I'm like, I want to write music. I like want to like play and like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, listening, writing my own stuff and just making it happen inspires me. But also just like listening to like the stuff that made me fall in love with music.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. I mean, and yeah, it's hard to find time, but when I can do it, especially now that I can listen while I'm driving, it's been like really actually improving my mood a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, going on drives is crucial for me, and listening to music, like listening to video game soundtracks.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the main things that keeps me feeling creative and inspired. So we're kind of coming to the end here. We're just about at almost the hour mark. So to wrap up, I just want to ask a couple of fun questions.
Sure.
If you could live in any video game world, what would it be and why?
Oh man, that's a great question. Huh. I'll just so I'll say I'm gonna say Final Fantasy 9,
Mm-hmm.
because in the world it's like until the plot happens, it's pretty peaceful. It's a very vibrant, diverse, lived-in world. That one always appealed to me. So people who like Final Fantasy 9, I think will know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go with that one.
Would you
And
say
hopefully
that's
they
your...
give me
Sorry,
what's that?
go ahead.
I say hopefully they give me a sword because that'd be cool.
Yeah. Would you say that that's your favorite game of all time?
Nah, not
No?
necessarily. I like it a lot. It's definitely an all-timer, but
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell you what my favorite game was. It's probably
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
FF6, Chrono Trigger, something like that.
Okay, cool. And then are there any upcoming releases that you're most looking forward to?
Yeah, so I'm currently writing music for a game called My Familiar,
Mm-hmm.
which you
Yeah.
mentioned the main theme on Critical Hits, and that will be premiering in public for the first time in January at MagFest 2023 with
Okay.
our first public demo. And I am so stoked for people to play this game. Mandy, it's wild.
Yeah.
This game, like it's like explosion of vibes and flavor in your face.
Hmm.
It's like insane. Like when I play it, I'm just like, I cannot believe I get the right music for this game. It is
Yeah.
so cool. It's so outrageous. The music's like really jazzy and funky and
Mm.
all full of life. I think people are gonna really be blown away when they play this game. So I'm super stoked for to see people play it in January because I'm gonna be at the conference. I'm gonna be at the booth. So that's what I'm most excited about right now.
Okay, yeah, I can't wait to play it. Maybe I'll come up there.
You should. It's a good hang. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. People wear their free flag over there though. So people are dressed in costumes and stuff. Like it's a bunch of nerds, but it's a good
I
time.
mean, hey, nothing wrong with that. I've never been before, so I think that maybe that could be a cool experience.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Um, all right, well, I'm going to put all of your social links and music links in the description box below. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. This has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed getting to know you a bit more. And I look forward to everything that you have coming out, the game, and I'm going to probably go listen to your new album again. Do you have anything else that you want to plug or say before we end?
No, I just want to thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun, and yeah, I appreciate talking to you. It's always nice to meet new people and you know, talk about music. I
Yeah,
love it.
and video games.
Yeah, and video games, video game music specifically. So thank you,
Specifically,
Mandy.
yes, of course. Yeah, okay.
All right, thanks, Mandy.
Yeah,
Have
no
a good
problem.
night.
Bye.